Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to Candid Conversations, a conversation that started with a couple of people who I asked to interview because of different topic areas that I thought were just really amazing to have. Hello, wonderful folks. Hello, happy Friday. And so one of my dear friends who I met I'll talk about how we met when I bring her on, but I want to introduce you to her. So first of all, today, I thought that it would be really amazing to have a conversation with a dear friend of mine. She is someone who I look up to, the many leadership roles that she's had. Rosann Santos is a bilingual keynote speaker. She's a curator of a podcast called Design Your Decade. And she's also an executive trainer. And if that wasn't enough, she's also a certified Gallup Strengths Coach. And so, hello, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. And so Rosann Santos, she just came on. So I'm going to actually just bring her in. I'll introduce her a little bit and we'll talk about Rosann, how also folks can get some context into our intimacy. So awesome. Hello, beautiful lady.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. Happy Friday. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to thank Rosann because it's because of Rosann that I even created like that flyer. Rosann reached out to me and she said, Cindy, she saw the last episode and she said, so who's your next guest? When do you have your show? And I started cracking up. I said, show? It's not a show. It's just whenever I feel like talking to someone, I just have these conversations. And she was like, girl, it's a show. And then Rosann said, well, who's your next guest? And I said, do you want to be my guest? And so Rosann, very vulnerably, very loving, said yes. And so the reason why I wanted Rosann to come on is because recently Rosann experienced a death in her family. And so it made me think about grief and grief in terms of what many of us are experiencing due to the pandemic. Many of us have had to shift our lives, literally. Many of us may have lost folks to COVID, but then there are so many other people that life was already going on in many different complicated ways. And then if you lost someone in the midst of all of that, and it wasn't even COVID related, there's just like another layer of complexity. And so I thought that for this holiday time, for everyone to engage in a conversation around grief. And I love that Rosann said, it's really a growth in progress, right? So I want to introduce I want to introduce you again, Rosann, because you're here and I want folks to hear how we met. So I met Rosann in 1999 intimately, but I knew you before that because you were at SUNY Albany and you knew my sister, Evelyn.
Yeah.
And we saw each other here and there. And then we became graduate students in a same program, Center for Women in Government and Public Policy. And then that's when we met. And then so we've seen each other's career grow in so many different ways and capacities. I've seen you do your keynote speaking, which is amazing. Rosann is a bilingual keynote speaker. She's a curator of a podcast called Design Your Decade. She's an executive trainer. She is no joke. So if you are part of a company that is looking for an amazing, phenomenal speaker that can speak both English and Spanish, I can't say that I'm a keynote speaker in Spanish. I cannot. But I can throw down in the English. I'm working on it. It's on my vision board for 2021. And then she's also a certified Gallup trainer. So all of that, right? All of that. And she's also a mom to an amazing young man, right?
Yes.
And thank you for sharing. Feel free to share in the chat as we're chatting I have an amazing friend, Iris, who's on, who shared that she lost her father-in-law recently. I'm so sorry to hear that. And it had no COVID relation, right? And so, Rosemary, what made you say yes to this conversation?
Roseanne, not Rosemary.
Oh my gosh. Oh, ay, Dios mío.
I thought I was nervous about this afternoon. I'm a little nervous. My stomach is kind of in circles because I haven't really spoken publicly. I speak with friends and privately and with relatives, but this is the gram.
Wow.
So I'm a little nervous.
Okay.
And I didn't realize how bad the greña was.
The greña is beautiful.
It's mess,
all good. It's all good. I have to adjust my camera so you can see my greña. See?
I love it.
It's Friday afternoon. Thank folks for joining in. Roseanne said yes. I said Rosemary because a friend of mine is on here that's named Rosemary. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm messing with you. Why did I say yes? Well, the number one reason was because I trust you. There's no doubt in my mind. I trust you. And I know that you have your own experience, a deep experience with grief. Absolutely. So yeah, that's why I said yes. I said yes because it was you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
And selfishly, I asked you to talk about grief because during the holidays, many of you might know that my father died in Flight 587 that was going to Dominican Republic, and it was now 19 years ago. And
no, it wasn't.
Year, yeah, my daughter just turned 18. Yeah, my daughter just turned 18. My daughter was born 9 months after the accident.
Oh,
wow! And so, you know, and I remember during those times you being so supportive, you reaching out to my family members. And no matter how long it's been since someone has lost someone, there is always that feeling that one gets, particularly during the holidays, right? So if you wouldn't mind sort of sharing, and we're here in vulnerability, in love, please put some hearts for our dear Roseanne as she shares of her situation. And I, again, thank you so much for being here.
Sure. And bear with me. I'm not a nervous speaker, but this is different, right?
Yeah.
So essentially on March 29th, it was a Sunday, 2 weeks into the pandemic and into isolation and quarantine, I get a phone call from my sister-in-law that, can you come over? Your brother's having chest pains. And I'm like, now I'm going to be really transparent. And, you know, and I've said this to her, so this is not anything that she hasn't heard. I was like, you're being dramatic. He's fine. But then something in me, I was like, she's really scared. She sounded really scared on the phone. They live 10 minutes away. Not even. I'm in the Bronx. And so I went. I packed up my bag. I got my laptop. I was in the middle of doing God knows what, something. And I went over to be supportive. And so by the time I got there, the ambulance was there. And we were still chit-chatting. As a matter of fact, I was making fun of him. And I said, why are you being such a troublemaker? It's Sunday afternoon. You know, we're supposed to be resting today. But, you know, so I think toward the end of the few minutes of just bantering, he was like, I have to go to the hospital. Like, you know, he had chest pain. And, you know, right before the ambulance took him, you know, the EMTs took him down, you know, I was like, you're such a troublemaker. And his last words to me was, don't tell mommy. Don't tell mommy. Typical man. Don't tell mom. Don't worry her. You know, I don't even know why she called you. You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
So I was like, fine, we'll be here waiting for you, right? And, you know, we weren't even, so I just was hanging out there. I stayed there just waiting because I figured, you know, they're going to call us. They're going to tell us to come pick him up. Not thinking anywhere near. If anything, I thought maybe he'd stay overnight.
Right.
Never in my brother was 45.
45.
Life ahead of him. He had a great career, well loved. People loved him. He was a generous guy. I didn't even realize how generous he was until after he passed away, and everybody starts, giving condolences. And then about 2 hours passed, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. And we got a call from the hospital, from the nurse. And we're like, oh, okay, get ready to pick him up. And a doctor comes on and says, I'm sorry, your brother has expired.
Wow. Wow.
And if anybody out there is going to be a doctor, please learn some bedside manner. Milk expires. I don't view a human being as expiring. And listen, I know we were in the thick of the beginning of COVID. I know we couldn't even go to the hospital with him.
Wow.
She couldn't go in the ambulance with him. None of us could go. Because of COVID. And essentially he went into cardiac arrest, and he died of a heart attack. So here we are. I don't know, where are we? 9 months later. 9 months later is still, still kind of raw. But we're moving forward. We're trying to do our best. Trying to be really strong for my parents.
Wow.
Because my parents are 74 and 82. They'll kill me for telling their age, but they don't have Instagram accounts. So they're not on the gram. And they're supposed to be going into this time in their lives, enjoying their kids, enjoying, their grandson, and, just not going into their latter years in grief, mourning. So it's been really tough for them. And, on June 27th, they celebrated their 50th.
Oh, wow. 50.
It was bittersweet. We started the day at the cemetery. And then we took a drive upstate to New Paltz, right? Which is, I know where Sophia went, right? And we did a little antiquing. There wasn't much open, but it was just to get out of the Bronx, just to get out of the city. And we just took that drive up the Hudson and drove back. But it was, my brother and I, and we had been planning a surprise 50th.
Wow.
When I tell you, his name was Eric. He died on the 29th, and people were receiving the invitation on the 30th.
Oh.
People were getting it in the mail. Some people got it a couple days before, but a lot of people said they got the invitation because we had no idea. We were like, let's just send them. We'll be done by June. This pandemic thing is not going to happen. Because their wedding anniversary was June 27th, and it was 50 years to the day. So we were like, let's just do it. It's June 27th on a Saturday. And I was like, should we send the invites? And he was like, yeah, we got to send them. Let's send them. So I had sent a bunch of them much earlier on, but I was still collecting addresses. And so people started to get the invitation the same day they were learning that he had passed. So that's the overarching story.
Yeah. Now, there's so much in that story that because of COVID, there's like an added layer of challenge, right? So your sister-in-law or you, neither of you were able to go with your brother to the hospital. No. So in essence, he was by himself, right?
One of the things the hospital said was he was never alone, but he wasn't with people who loved him. Wow. I mean, listen, I know the healthcare workers, God bless them, right? So, but still, it's not the same.
Wow. And we have Iris is sharing that, it always feels raw, beautiful. Yes, she is beautiful. And the feeling doesn't go away until this day. Iris has had a daughter who passed away. And so I definitely sending love to everyone that is listening to this. If you're listening to this after the replay and you have had someone pass, particularly during this time. So what was that like, Rosann, having to then contact your parents?
Girl, that was awful.
Oh.
That was awful. I mean, there's nothing that I could say. Listen, we're both moms. I'm seeing names. I'm assuming there are many parents on here. None of us wants that call. Wow. None of us, whether we're 100 and they're 50 or we're 25 and they're 5, none of us wants that call that we've outlived our children.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And we had lost a cousin 3 days before my age. He was 50. We lost a cousin to COVID. So ironically, when I walked into my parents' house, my dad was on the phone with my cousin's dad, who had just lost his son.
Wow.
And I was like, I need you to get off the phone. I need you to get off the phone. And he's like, I'm talking to Felix right now. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I know that he's, you know, in mourning and you're giving him console, but I need you to get off the phone. So I had to tell them. Like, it was my job to tell them. And it was an extremely dramatic evening, as you can imagine.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all those beautiful details. I never met your brother, but through social media, what I love about social media is that you kind of get to know people's personalities through the pictures, through the stories. Yeah. And so I saw countless amazing pictures of you and your brother dancing and just experiencing joy. Yeah. Connection. And so I cannot even imagine what it might have been like even to share with your son, because he had a very close relationship with your son.
He did. Yeah. And my son, you know, my son has a great dad. His dad is in his life. My father and my brother were not replacements for that. But the bottom line was we were all in the Bronx. His dad is in Brooklyn. So it was my brother and my dad who went to the basketball games, who went to the picnics, who did the Little League. You know, if you know the Bronx, he was, you know, we're over here in Throgs Neck. So he was in the, I forgot what they call it, Bronxchester Little League. So they were the ones that were able to go to those things on a daily because we're just here in the Bronx. Nothing is really far, right? It's traffic that makes things far, but in essence, you can get anywhere very quickly. They were the ones who picked him up from school. If I had a speaking engagement somewhere else, if I was working late, it was one of them or, you know, my sister-in-law who was getting him. So it's a pretty tight-knit group.
Wow.
And it's interesting because my son is going through the high school process right now. And my brother is an alum of Fordham Prep. So prior to Eric passing, about last year, he took Ethan to Fordham to kind of look around and go to the bookstore. They got him, I don't know, like a T-shirt and a water bottle. And he was like, okay, you're going to come here. Wow. And I was like, you know how much Fordham Prep costs? No, if he's going there. But yeah, you know, my brother came with me and my son to the open house. We took a tour. He's like, oh, things have changed. So, you know, he was very much a part of his academic life. You know, depending on how well he did on a report card, he would gift him something.
Nice.
Yeah, my brother was very generous with everyone. And yeah, it was a hard news for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, where did you feel the grief in your body?
That's such a good question.
Thank you.
Well, because does everyone feel grief in a physiological way? Because I felt immediately like I had to throw up. Not to be graphic, but I ran to the bathroom and I thought I had to literally throw up. Nothing came out, but that was the feeling I got. I mean, I know what it feels like to have to do that. And I was like, I have to go to the bathroom. And I was like, I did really feel it from a physical perspective. Like I was in shock.
Wow. Well, some people don't realize that when you experience any type of trauma, it goes somewhere in the body, and we don't actually identify it right away. And so what's fascinating about, the more I delve into collective healing and trauma work, I'm learning about how trauma manifests in your body. And so for you, it manifested in that there was something going on in your stomach, right? Where the nausea, right?
It was nausea, immediate nausea. It happened immediately.
Wow.
Like, am I hearing this? Like, what does he mean by expired? I know damn well what the word expired means, but I've never heard anyone talk about someone expiring. So I was like, wait, maybe I'm misunderstanding. Maybe this means something else in medical vernacular, So,
wow.
I was like, what do you mean by that? I did ask the doc. I was like, wait, what is that? Yeah. I was like, wait, what does that mean? And he said he passed away.
Well, and I love that when you talked about it, you made reference. You said anyone that's listening and is in the medical field, like, think about that bedside manner. I mean, I've never heard any person be referred in connection with the word expired in my life until you just said it. And so I can't even imagine what that was like to hear that, and then to sort of internalize, like, did they just say that about my family member? Right. Mm-hmm. And do you mind walking us through, so you get this information, you're with your sister-in-law, what happens days subsequently? Like, I'd love for you to, if you feel comfortable, walking us through, like, what was the grief process like for you sort of immediately after? What were some things that you did for comfort, for consolation? Were there people by your side? Were there things that you did? Could you help us to?
Yeah, I'm comfortable. I'm all in, Cindy. I'm all in.
Thank you.
Did I do anything? I don't believe in retrospect that I did anything for comfort until much farther removed. I had to get through I had to get through the consumer piece. And let me tell you what I mean about that. Are expensive.
Yeah.
And so I had to get through picking out a casket, picking out a plot, deciding on the cemetery, keeping my parents calm, those kinds of things, letting the family know, dealing with the funeral home, and, money is not about money, but it is because, and, I probably will weave this in as we go, because I have a learner mindset, and I'm all about, what am I going to learn from this? Because it can't be in vain. And I can't let this be in vain. So, off the top, it was like, okay, we have to deal with a funeral home. Now, mind you, let's keep remembering and keep saying COVID.
Wow.
Funeral homes, I learned, are governed by the Department of Health. As I'm sure all of you heard all the different horror stories of bodies being kept in U-Haul trucks because there was no room. Did you hear those news stories?
I did.
Yeah. So that's all health department stuff. Wow. Because of COVID, the rule was this. If you died of COVID, you go straight to cremation, no funeral home, no funeral. If you didn't die of COVID, you can have 3 hours in the funeral home. People have to line up outside, 6 feet apart, and we can only give you 3 hours, and only the limo of whoever's in the limo will be allowed into the cemetery. Wow. So we had a caravan of people following to the cemetery. The cemetery closed the gate on them. It was only my parents, my sister-in-law, my son.
And you come from a Dominican background, right?
My cousin snuck in.
You come from a Latina background.
Yes, girl.
So you were probably 30 cars out.
Well, no, this is the part that was so hard. you know, we did not have the number of people coming. As a matter of fact, we have more of his like friends and more of our like younger peers coming. None of my aunts and uncles. One uncle did come, even though he, you know, from a health perspective, he probably should have stayed home. But my father's brother,
Oh, yeah.
you know, he's, you know, they're in their late 70s. Like, they don't really need to be out. Again, it's April at this point, and we're in the middle of COVID, like deep, right? So, you know, you had to have a mask. At this point, people were wearing gloves a lot. And so that whole process was even more depressing because we couldn't be around like our loved ones in the same way. You know, inside the salon where the casket, the viewing, they were only allowed 10 people in there at a time. And the seats were 6 feet apart. I couldn't even sit next to my mother.
Wow.
Like, she was in the middle, right in front of the casket. I was here. His partner was here. My mother was in the middle. And then we didn't really let anybody sit because there was a line.
Oh.
So it was like people just kind of came in, paid their respects, said a little prayer, walked out. Like, you know, I see like a line, seriously, down East Tremont, going into the place and coming out. And so that was really, really hard, even though many people came out who probably were not sure. But I don't begrudge anyone that decided not to come out.
Yeah.
Because I get it. Would I have let my mom go anywhere?
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, she would have to have insisted. So that process in the days following, you know, it's just people, I mean, so you have two kinds of people, right? You have people calling who were like, is this true? Like, people couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Was he sick? Not that I knew of, not that he knew of either, right?
Well, so it wasn't that he had a heart condition that folks were aware of. Wow.
No. This is like, it really, we all got the wind knocked out of us.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we all could stand to lose a little weight, to eat a little better. But, you know, I don't want to be biased, but I am going to say that we probably know that our men of color do not trust doctors.
Yeah.
Do not want to go to the doctor. They don't, you know, and people, you know, they don't want to tell. It's like, oh, I had a pain on Thursday, but my appointment is a month later. I don't remember to tell you about that pain on Thursday. And I don't know that to be true for him, but I do know it to be true that he, like many others, you know, they don't want to go to the doctor. They don't want to, they're not paying attention. They want to eat what they want to eat. They want to drink what they want to drink, you know? So, you know, that's another lesson, right? So the lesson of preparation, I mean, I know it sounds horrible, but, you know, we need to have a plan for when we're not here. So I don't want my son to be told, well, hey, a casket is $10,000, the funeral home is $11,000, the plot is $40,000. Like, what?
Right.
So I don't want him to go through that. So, you know, this kind of planning, really, really important, because you know better than anybody that we are not guaranteed tomorrow, and we're not even guaranteed an hour from now.
Absolutely.
Como está yendo la cosa, you know?
Yes,
so,
yes.
You know, another lesson is that, right? So it's the planning, and then this idea of staying healthy, if not for you, for your family, for your children, especially when it's stuff that you can control, right? There are illnesses out there we cannot control. But when it comes to getting some exercise, eating better, we can control that. It's hard, but we can control it, you know? So, but another lesson, right? So there's like all these little lessons. And in terms of when I finally started to give myself what did you say? Like started to take care of myself or something?
Yeah, like what were some things that you did to help yourself feel better or be in connection with others to fully embrace that this had occurred, right? To actualize that you were grieving.
So it didn't happen until very recently.
Yeah.
Again, I really wanted to kind of be there for my parents. I felt like I can't fall apart because they need me, right?
Yeah.
So it was a solitary process.
Come on.
Not anybody's fault. Everybody was calling me. Everybody was calling, texting, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
I love my people, my friends, my family. I couldn't have picked a better family to be born into.
Oh, that's awesome.
Neighbors, you know, but I didn't want to burden anybody.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like, people come to me to help them.
Yeah.
I don't want to bother anybody with anything. And I know that none of my friends would have felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
One of my dearest friends, she's a psychologist by trade, and I can call her 24/7. And I know that, and I do. But it got to a point where it was like, damn, every time I call a friend, I got to talk about how bad I feel or how sad I didn't want to bring everybody else down. So it took me a really, really, really long time. And finally, about a month and a half ago, I hired a therapist.
Wow. Rosann, I appreciate you sharing that vulnerability, because for some people, I have to be honest, you know how long it took me? 18 years.
Really?
18 years to finally grieve my father's death.
Really?
Right? And so the fact that and I might cry, and that's okay if the tears come out, y'all. Send us some hugs. Send us some hearts. But the fact that you said yes to this conversation, Rosann, spoke to me in such a heartfelt way about where you're at in your process, right? And everyone's process is going to be unique. We cannot compare ourselves to other people. I wondered why in Spanish, there's a term that says, tú lloraste, tu papá, or tú no lo lloraste. Like you didn't cry. And there's this idea that if you don't cry it out, that you didn't grieve, right? So that's definitely a myth.
That's so cool.
But in particular instance, and in seeing how, what resonated with me with what you just said, and there's folks that are going to listen to this and hear that about you being the strong friend, right? The strong one, where everyone calls Rosann. Rosann knows the words to say, how to maneuver your situation. She'll get you executive presence. I just listened to her podcast. You definitely want to check it out. And that you felt, even though you had all these amazing people in your life, that you felt that I don't want to burden them, right? So finally, you got to a place where you said, well, I'm going to seek someone outside of the circle, professional support. I also saw a therapist, and I'm seeing a therapist, and see the difference between, having friends that are there to connect, right? And also then having that person that's sort of not part of that circle. Jay Godiva wants no one to see a wrinkle in their armor. I love that. Is that your friend?
That's my cousin, Jessica, and I definitely prayers to everyone. She too lost a brother a year ago. Wow. So she knows.
She knows. And I love that she says you don't want to see a wrinkle in your armor. Mm-hmm. And what I'm learning just so much from your vulnerability around, like, you did it in solidarity, right? You said
in solitude. Yeah.
And it was just, now what was it? And for folks that are in the space, because I know that there's folks in the space that may be considering getting a therapist, that maybe have thought about it, whether it's for grieving or for a past trauma, Now, what process did you take to find someone that would be the right fit for you?
Another great question. So some of that has to do with my personality. I'm really cerebral. I'm a researcher. I'm like the pros and the cons. Do I really need this? So there was a practical issue. Does my insurance cover any of this? So I had to take that into consideration. How much would I be willing to pay if my insurance didn't cover it? Turns out my insurance covered it and I don't even have a copay. So that was number one. Number two, she had to be a woman of color. I don't care if it was Black or Latina. It didn't matter to me, but it could only be one or the other. Like, I just wanted somebody who got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, sometimes, like you say, you just say some things in Spanish, you say something that's very cultural, and you don't have to go into an explanation. We all got it. You know, no entendemos, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that it was that. So I did find, I like her. She's so far so good. Smart woman, you know, and from, you know, Brooklyn girl. And I think I have not asked her, but I think she's Puerto Rican. But I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. I was like, she just has to be Latina or Black. Period.
Excellent.
And I told her, you know, when we were talking and exploring whether I would be able to fit into her timeline, into her schedule, she was like, would you be okay if I referred you? And I said, only if you refer me to another Black or Latina woman. But it worked out, you know, our scheduling worked out.
So you did an interview with her, in essence, it sounds like.
Yeah. I didn't think of it that way, but it was kind of an introductory conversation to see what my needs were, what's her expertise, you know, what is she an expert in, and she does grief, she does multicultural counseling around, you know, folks who have experienced you know, aggressions or experiences as a result of their ethnicity or their culture. And she does a lot of child psychology stuff. So I know I'm not giving it the right language. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I love it.
I was like, it's serious business. I know. Yes, there was a little mini interview. You're right. And I was like, well, what's your copay? And how often can we meet? And how long are the meetings? And you know, etc.
Wow. And so, you know, in thinking about where we are, you're 9 months into the process of, you know, the actualization that your brother's no longer here on the earth plane, right? You know, where do you see yourself in terms of, I love that you already started with the lessons, and I knew you would do that. I knew you had the lessons. I knew it.
I'm cerebral.
I knew it. But, and I love that because I also think that way too, that everything that happens to me, there's always a lesson and a blessing, right? I'm
still trying to find the blessings in disguise, but there are some, a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
My parents and I decided to start a couple of scholarships in his name.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It is. And, you know, I thought that would be a nice way to honor him. So if any of you have a son out there who wants to go to Fordham Prep, there's the Eric Santos Memorial Scholarship.
Wow. We
started the Santos Family Scholarship at my high school, the Academy of Mount St. Ursula.
Wow.
For a young woman. And the one in Fordham Prep has to be, the scholarship will only go to a Latino from the Bronx. So, if any of you know anything about the Bronx or Fordham University or Fordham Prep, it's, you know, it's in a community where no one can afford the school.
Yeah.
It's you know.
It's right. Yeah, it's right across from the Botanical Gardens.
Yeah, right? It's right across from the Botanical Gardens. And then we donate money to SU for scholarship for a Black or Latina woman. So, you know, we do those three. The one in Fordham is especially, you know, poignant, and whenever this is all over, we really would like to do a memorial service whenever this is over. And I've been considering whether or not I should turn that into also a fundraiser for that specific scholarship.
Yeah.
So, those are, a couple of things we wanted to do to honor him.
Yes. And that is such a blessing, because I myself was a scholarship recipient at Cathedral High School.
Oh, yes.
And I would not have, so the scholarship person ended up in the second year not being able to pay the other 2 years because of financial crisis. But it was because of a memorial situation that scholarship even existed. And I was able to stay at Cathedral, but I never met the person and wished I had, because I'm so grateful for my education there and that opportunity. So, and and that's why I think you're also committed to educating, mentoring, and supporting, folks of color, women, men in leadership, because we both know that it's in having that social capital and that ability to have that upward mobility that we're able to create bigger impact in ways that, I know that you're a big thinker, and in ways that are meaningful and powerful. It's not just like this little. I know that when Rosann is thinking about something, she's like, "Ooh!" Right? So Rosann, we thought we would open it up for anyone that might have any questions. Sure. First of all, could you tell us a little bit, because I want people to know where to find you. If you could tell us what it is that you're doing. Do you have a website? Tell us what your podcast name is.
Yes, RosannSantos.com. That's my home. You can find me there. The podcast is called Design Your Decade, Journey to the C-Suite. It's a lot of fun. I think you guys will really enjoy it. They're anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. So they're like bite-sized best practices for moving up in your career. For those of you who know, I used to do these Power Move Mondays on Instagram. Yeah. They were like 59 minutes. Like you had 59 seconds to do like these bite-sized advice. And so this is kind of a culmination and a dream that I've had. And finally it launched last Friday. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, the last few days I've been following it. But you can go to Apple and just type in Design Your Decade and it comes right up. And so RosannSantos.com is really the best place to find me. I'm on all social media as Rosann Santos, everything. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram,
awesome.
LinkedIn, I'm there.
Awesome. I just found out about Rosann's podcast because I go on LinkedIn like once or twice a day just to see what's going on. And I see this link in status about a podcast. I linked it and I listened. I'm a binge listener of podcasts, especially if they're like 15, 20-minute ones. And I listened to 3 of the episodes and absolutely loved it. I sent it to 3 of my friends. You definitely want to check it out. So at this time, first of all, Rosann, I want to thank you for your vulnerability, for your authenticity, for the lessons in the process, and helping us to understand that, first of all, grief is different for everyone. The experience is ongoing, right? You get to cherish the memories of your dear Eric, and I'm sure that things will continue to unfold, right? In your process. And I'm glad that you were able to find someone that you're comfortable with to talk to. And so I want to open up for any questions. I mean, I have a million questions, and that's why I love talking to people, and I'm always so curious. But I would love to, if anyone wants to, you could either put it in the chat or put it in the little question mark. Any questions that you have for Rosann, or any comments of anything, if anything resonated for you.
Well, doing that, Cindy, I got to give my final lesson. And it comes from my practical, realistic side. And that is, you have to have a will.
Come on.
It just, again, this is not about, listen, none of us we don't have any kind, we don't have you know, Tesla money, you know, Elon Musk money. We don't have that. But it just makes things so much easier for those you have left behind.
Wow.
You know, and I would highly recommend, especially if you have children, even if you don't have a dollar to your name, have a will that says, if I'm not here, everything I own goes to that child. Everything I own can be split in half, whatever it is. Trust me.
Wow.
If you care about the people you're leaving behind. You know, and listen, no 45-year-old thinks they're gonna heart attack. Right? So of course we all think we have so much time. But one of the things I did since his passing is I have a will.
Wow.
I don't have much, but it's clear that it all goes to Ethan. Every piece of jewelry, everything, anything that I have in the bank, you know, it's just leave no question, because, you know, you never know who's gonna, God forbid something happens to him before he's an adult, or what happens to me before he's an adult, there's nobody who would come take advantage. Wow. You know, if you know, create a trust, do something, but spend that $300 or whatever it costs on LegalZoom or whatever, get a lawyer, write a will. Trust me.
No, and there's actually a website. There was a friend of mine whose friend was conducting these free sessions where she was teaching people how to do the wills and all these different documents. And that ministry, she called it a ministry, came out of a tragic death situation that occurred with her parents, where there were no wills, there were no trusts, there was nothing. And she had to fight in probate court for a couple of hundred, you know, it was just outrageous.
It breaks up the family. The grief. And then if there's anything of value, you just want to make sure that that's solid and taken care of and legal, and that no one can swoop in out of nowhere. You know, you just want to make sure, just for your own peace of mind and the peace of mind of the people who are left behind. But are there any questions?
Are there any questions? I see. Do you see the comments?
Oh, yeah.
There's some comments there. Oh, hi, Siri. There's, you know, yes.
You know everybody I know.
What was so funny, I know a lot of people that you know, and I think, and it's through the writing network that I'm a part of.
Oh, okay.
So I've met a lot of your hermanas, and I've also, a few of them went to Columbia School of Social Work. So it's so funny. Sometimes people are like, do you happen to know Rosann Santos? I'm like, oh, I know Rosann. So amazing. So Rosann, I love your lessons, and you're absolutely right. Folks that are listening to this, if you don't have a will, get on it. When you get that stimulus check, instead of buying new clothes, get yourself a will. That's going to be the new thing.
Right. If it's on your asset, it's no asset.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So listen, that's important. So any questions, any comments before we close out here? Anyone else want to share something that was poignant for you in this discussion? No, not yet. Okay. I do.
Here too, Disney. Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, I said I saw one of my colleagues, didn't see. I was just thanking her for being here. And, you know, I like what you're doing. I love what you're doing on the Instagram conversations. And, you know, the woman you had last year, I felt like I was a fly on the wall of like some bochinche, but it was her. She was talking about her own bochinche. And I was like, that's why I want to be at the next show. I want to see what other people bochinche is.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And because of you, I'm going to continue the series. And I'm coming after you, Doctora Cristina. I'm coming after you to be one of my guests in January, because I'm already booked for December. I had people DMing me.
That's amazing.
So I thought that was so amazing. You know, and know that I'm thinking of you during this holiday.
Thank you. And I'm thinking of you. I think of you every November.
Oh, thank you.
Because, you know, on the news, sometimes the news outlets will be like, oh, you know, they'll remember it.
Yeah.
And I think you, and I had one other friend who lost her mom on that same flight.
Wow. Well, I
Well,
have to tell you that I never watched TV on November 12th. Never.
Okay.
Because the thought of seeing the plane crash and the flames is too traumatic for me.
Just every day it is traumatic.
Yeah, every day. So I can't imagine, like, for you, I want my invitation to you during these holidays and beyond is to feel all the feelings that come up for you. The joyful stories, the hilarious situations y'all ain't had no business getting into when y'all were teenagers. To
I got a good story.
Right? That's to the real story, right? To the moments leading up to, like, I love how you shared that story of you like, why are you playing games, you troublemaker, right? But all of that also, you know, and I don't know where you are in your spiritual journey, right? But, you know, and where you might feel about that, but open yourself up to the possibilities of messages, right? Of confirmation and affirmation that he might be sending to you, right?
And no time with that, but I continue to struggle with that.
Yeah.
You know, this idea of, you know, my mom wants to go to the cemetery every day.
Wow.
That is not where I'm going to find him. Like, I don't feel a connection at the cemetery, you know, the way him and his partner, I mean, the way my mom and his partner, they feel like, you know, there's a connection there. And my dad has never said this to me out loud, but we are peas in a pod. I can tell, you know, he doesn't feel the connection. That's not where he and I feel our connection to him. It's not the cemetery. I don't know where it is yet or where it's going to be.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like photographs.
Oh, I love that.
It's like those little videos, you know, that I'll post once in a while of him being silly or dancing. You know, for me, is for people to tell me how much they loved him or how generous he was, or, you know, there's a story. One of his goddaughters told my mother a story that has, you know, really she's loved, and he went with her to the bank to teach her how to open a bank account and how to save money because she kept spending her money on, you know, whatever 18-year-olds spend their money on. And, you know, that's where I find a connection with him. It's let me tell you, he's at Woodlawn. So he's like in a freaking penthouse of cemeteries. If you know anything about Woodlawn Cemetery, he is like 2 steps. He's right next to Celia Cruz. In that same little section. And we kind of, you know, that's a little like light in the day. Every time we go, we pass Celia's, you know, tomb. Then we go up the hill to where he is. So, but you know, I still don't know where exactly. I find him in my son.
Yes.
You know, that's important. He wants to go to, I asked him seriously. I said, you know, there's no pressure. Do you really want to go to Fordham? You know, is it just because you feel you have to go now because there's that legacy piece? I want to come here. And I said, you know, we went on a private tour. They're only touring 2 families at a time. And I know they cut off. But very quickly, talking about signs and how I still have, I'm not there yet. But they took us to the 2nd floor to start the tour. I kid you not, the admissions director stopped right in front of his picture. Right in front of his picture.
Wow.
So they have all of the classes in frames, right? And he stopped right in front of the class of 1992. And, you know, there's not a lot of little chocolate chips in Fordham Prep, you know? So I saw his caramel chips. But I saw his, you know, he stood out because he was darker skinned than the rest of the guys in the picture. And I was like, look at your uncle right there. And I said, are you going to be okay? Like, if you come to school here, this is one of your floors. You're going to see him, his picture. Is that okay? And he was like, that's cool. I would love that. Like, to him, he saw it as, that's going to be really awesome. My uncle's going to be right here. You know, children are so resilient. He's been like a savior, You know, he is a cuddly teddy bear, you
Oh.
know. And so, you know, talking about signs, I forgot about that. But, you know, I'm trying to keep an open mind to that stuff, you know. And the fact that you said that, you know, I was like, he stopped right in front of the class of 1992.
Yeah.
That's his class. That's his picture. I looked over and I saw his ugly face staring at me. And I was like, oh my God, this is like, I said, you see your uncle right there? And it was just weird that he stopped right in front of that portrait.
Wow.
So you have a point. You know, I keep getting hit with it and I'm in denial.
You know, and what I have to say is honor yourself and where you're at. I can't stand going to the cemetery. I didn't go for years. I don't go. My mother, and it's at St. Raymond's by Lafayette Street. I go once in a while. Like, I'm very connected to his spirit. And once in a while, he like tells me to go. And usually when I go, it's because of a decision or something. And then I just go for the moment. I take him his Corona. I mean, his Bud's, no, Coors Light. And then I pour it in. No, Coors, no, he liked Coors Light. You know, and I want to say that you have laid the foundation for Ethan in such an amazing way. All that you have already experienced, you know, in your lifetime, the resiliency, the love, the connection, the faith, and the leadership, right? And so all the love that you've poured into him, they pour that right back into us, girl. That's what's amazing about children. Yeah. So thank you so much. Look, she's messed up my makeup. I gotta go redo my makeup. Dios mío.
You look beautiful. Is it date night tonight?
No date night tonight. No date night. I have writing to do.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for being you. You know, because I said yes to this because it was you. For real. I know I don't see you every day, but I feel like when I do see you, we pick up right where we left off. So.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Rosann. For those of you that were able to join us, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story of growth in progress, the story of grief, and that grief continues, and that it's okay to feel all the feelings, and it's okay to be in solitude. And when you're feeling that you need a little bit more, it's okay to seek professional support. We have to normalize those conversations in our communities, and it's okay. And it's okay to say, I want a therapist of color, and you demand what you want, and you get what you want, and you interview them, right? But so everyone have a wonderful evening. Rosann, have a beautiful holiday.
Everyone. Love you. Mwah.
Thank you. Take care. Love you too.